Hi, hello everyone. Can you hear me well?
Well, perfectly well.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so thank you first of all, thank you for the invitation the second invitation, in fact, because I had a pleasure to participate the last time and it was a great experience. So it's good to see everybody in those difficult times. And today, of course, we're focusing on a completely different set of priorities and completely different set of challenges, because last time I remember I was talking about place branding in the digital world, which was kind of very comforting and very reassuring. But now, since we have what we have, we need to refocus, okay? So that is why my presentation today will also be about a very different subject, of course, related to what we are talking about. So my goal will be to share with you our experience, our Polish experience in hosting international students during the time of pandemic. Because this is something that requires special attention, because we in Poland do not only see that as a business opportunity for us, but also we see that as a way to advance our education, as a way to advance our universities. And that's why I think special attention should be placed for countries like Poland on hosting international students. So first of all, let me give you an idea of what I'll be talking about. Well, first of all, I'll set the context, show you a bit of numbers, what it looks like in Poland. And then we're going to look at how the COVID situation developed at Polish universities, which is very, very briefly. And then I will touch on the challenges of internationalized education during the pandemic. And I think that many of my conclusions will be in line with Alexandra's, especially in the area of soft skills that professors require and the universities require these days. And of course, last but not least, I'll be touching on the way forward. So what we can do policy-wise, intellectually and emotionally to address the challenges that we are faced with. Okay, so without further ado, let's start with the context. Poland is a very dynamic country in terms of hosting international students. We can see that it's a tenfold increase from 2005 until today. So maybe the absolute numbers are not that impressive, but the dynamics is quite impressive actually. So we've got just over 6% of students who constitute foreign students who constitute the 6.37% of the entire population. And we have actually gained our higher status recently in terms of rankings in international admissions, because we rank 7. Also, I'm proud to say that my university this year has increasingly improved its position, and it now ranks 3rd in Poland. So that's just a comment. Okay, and maybe some of you will be interested as well in knowing that medicine and management are key or let's say flagship degree courses at the moment, up to the point where we actually have no space or no place for foreign students in medicine anymore. So this is actually very surprising, at least for me, but perhaps not surprising, because we in Poland, we need more doctors. That's actually the problem of many countries these days. All right, so this is what it looks like in Poland. Let's see just one more thing. What are the countries of origin of international students in Poland? As you can see, we've got a vast majority of Ukrainian students, but also from Belarus and other countries, including the European Union. However, well, from Russia, unfortunately, not that many, but I hope that it will change. It will change soon. And well, it's interesting to note also that we have the biggest dynamics in the number of admissions of students from Central Asia, countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, definitely the fastest growing segment of our international students. Okay, so after this introduction, let's see what it looked like in terms of COVID at Polish universities. So as everyone probably around the world, we have experienced a hectic time. This is just a very, very simplified graph or a timeline of what has happened throughout the pandemic. And just to show you something that was identified by Polish researcher, Polish sociologists, who had a number of interviews with Polish academics. So they have described to her the emotions and the impressions that could be summarized here, right? That coming from suspension and chaos in the first part, then the attempts to have support from the universities, or lack of the support, because this is where it got very diversified, very varied, to saying that this is something normal that we should adapt to the overload of work, to feeling overburdened necessarily, and finally to acceptance and adaptation. And hopefully, as I think I'm not speaking only for Poland, that these changes that were forced upon us will actually result in some systemic change, that our educational systems will improve overall because of this pandemic, that for once it will be a good turnout from the situations that we are living. Okay, so let's go to international students and the problems, the issues that come along. So what I'm presenting now is the second survey that was run after the first turn of pandemic in June and July. It covered 45 Polish universities, and it was run by the initiative called Study in Poland, which is very well grounded, both state-wise and university-wise in Poland. And of course, their objective, just like in my presentation here, was to examine the situation of international students and of course the response of Polish universities to this situation. Okay, so let's first have a look at the biggest number that everyone was interested in. So how many people effectively left Poland because of the outbreak? I mean, the students, of course. Okay, you can see that there is quite a considerable chunk of universities that say that from 20 to 50% of international students left, okay, which is a lot. 13% of research universities claim that it was over 50% that left. So that was a very considerable outflow, which is expected to take toll on many aspects of the university's functioning. And just let me go on and identify the major challenges. Okay, so of course the financial issues came as first, right? So vacant spaces in dormitories and purpose-built student accommodation, there were definitely, they posed a financial problem. Same was with the collectability of tuition fees. So just under 50% of universities said that they had problems collecting tuition fees. And the prognosis, unfortunately, are not that optimistic, because we're expected to lose 20 to 30% more of students because of the situation. So basically, universities started taking measures to address this financial issue. So the most prevailing ones were actually the reductions in dormitory fees, the reductions and installments for tuition fees. And the opportunities that our students have both from home and abroad to apply for hardship benefits. So this was something that was supposed to soothe, it's supposed to ease a little bit students functioning in this new environment, but also we have to admit that it's not the only solution that has to be taken, that there are other things to be done. So moving on to other things, the second challenge, of course, is providing a high quality education in English during the times of pandemic, if we're talking about international students. So what's been researched here was the estimation of how many or what portion of courses in English that were available offline, so to speak, or in standard teaching, were switched to online. Okay, as you can see, almost half of the university's research said that it was over 60% of courses that were available, but also there is the other 50% where these courses were kind of not translated in large proportions to the online environment, which also posed a significant problem. If we look at the barriers of online teaching to international students, again, I can see a lot of things that resonate with Alexandra's presentation, like, for example, the digital resistance of lecturers, right? Which also, of course, happened in Poland. But here, I think I personally find that the biggest barrier there can be that you actually need some direct contact with people, even though you have those wonderful platforms, that you have those, techniques and instruments. you still need to see people face to face. For example, I'm running a course on effective communication and presentation, and up till last month, I didn't know I could do it online, because having to observe people's body language and giving them feedback is a completely different thing when it comes to online teaching. Also, I think that what we all experience is inability to control students' engagement. And the further the students are away from us, probably the more difficult it is, due to different housing conditions, due to different attitudes, etc., etc. And the other things are probably the usual, like language problems or competences, digital competences, equipment shortages, etc., etc. So this was something that actually was also given as one of the biggest barriers, one of the biggest challenges, how to provide the online education in English. Okay, and the next thing that I want to talk about, and I think that given what Alexandra said, it seems to me that it's critically important, because this is something that is very often overlooked, the emotional well-being of foreign students. From what you said, Alexandra, before, it seemed that our students want to see us more as, coaches, mentors, even therapists of some sort, right? If we consider that. They don't want to see the researchers, they don't want to see brilliant intellectuals, they want to see human beings, right? And of course, with international students, it's even more than that, because those people are away from home, or they are away at the university, and of course, their level of discomfort varies across different things. So what has been done at Polish universities to assure the smooth transition, or smoother transition? Okay, so I have to say that the array of things is really impressive, starting with webinars and online events, but also things like 24/7 helpline, like dedicated groups on social media where people can actually discuss their problems, they can share their problems with their peers, right? Even physically, the distribution of masks and hygiene products to foreign students, right? So all these things, they actually tell you that in order to be ready for the challenges that are upcoming right now, you have to also get more in touch with your human side, which is funny, because we are talking digital all the time, right? And we're thinking that our human self is something that we should hide on the shelf, but it's not really, it's exactly the opposite to me. Okay, so the last challenge, very quickly, how to get back on track, because we need to think beyond the pandemic, right? So we mustn't actually stop the activities that we have done before. We need to increase them, we need to alter them in some manners. So also the universities that were researched were asked to point which were the most common, let's say, ways of communicating with prospective students and with current students. And as you can see, this is the look at the major ways of communication. Of course, social media with young people plays a critical role, but also something that I want to stress very much, alumni relations. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So what is the way forward? So how to stay connected during the pandemic and beyond? And of course, this is one of the, being public universities in Poland for the most part, but also private ones. We need to understand that the change can only be affected with cooperation between the government and the universities, that no single university is able to affect the change on its own. So let's have a look based on the survey also, because this is actually what people expect at the universities from the government. What could the government do to do that? Okay, so there is usual things like financial and legal and tech support, which I think is relatable to all countries. I will only tell you that universities in Poland haven't achieved any financial backup from the government since COVID outbreak. We were probably one of the very few types of institutions who haven't received any of those. Primary schools, they did, of course, different sectors of economy, they did, etc., etc. But we were omitted in this particular case. Of course, it is needed that the government develops programs like Study in Poland, like digital ambassadors, the IT hub for Poland, etc., etc. What about universities then? I was referring to the role of alumni, which should be growing. This is our most effective and cost-effective way to actually get in touch with people around the world. And the Digital Ambassadors program, which I happen to be a part of, I'm doing the training there, is also a way to reconnect with the people who have already studied or are still studying, and to treat them as a kind of the messengers for whatever we want to say. Okay, from the perspective of teaching, moving from emergency remote teaching to real online learning, which means providing people with real online experiences, not only doing the same thing, but online. Of course, simplification and clarification of procedures, and moving key promotional events online, which has already happened in Poland, but of course it still needs to be sustained, it needs to be developed. Last thing that I want to mention, sorry, is that for countries like Poland, it is very important in terms of internationalization not to fall into the cheap destination trap, right? So we have plenty of students, the numbers are growing, and of course this is due to the fact that we are in the European Union, but it's also due to the fact that our studies are cheaper, pretty much more affordable than studies in Western European countries. However, in order to not to fall too deep into this trap, what needs to be done very urgently with universities and the government cooperating is to develop priority research areas and flagship degree courses, right? Which would not only be attractive for people, but would also resonate with the economic profile of the country. And I think that this is something that, let's say, aspiring countries must do, must think of. So again, finishing off, we come back to branding, right? That in order to brand ourselves effectively as a university, as a country for studies, we need to find our area of specialty that resonates with our development. Okay, thank you very much. By the way, this is the actual photo of the foreign students of a University of Łódź. And I'm just hoping that we will see these things more often very soon. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marta. You know, your slide with us periods of how the university was closed first, and then what happened,
yes.
and the reaction of the community, student community and professors community, I guess, to that reminded me of 5 stages of grief acceptance, you know?
Exactly, exactly.
Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. When I was preparing this slide, this was exactly what I had in mind. We are in joint therapy. There's nothing to be done about that.
Yes, Alexandra, please, you wanted to ask a question. I'm going to do everything.
Dziękujemy bardzo za report.
Bardzo proszę.
I am a representative of the alumni that you were talking about. Yes, because I've been in Poland for one of the semester. Yes, and now I teach Polish also. Yes, so that's why that report was about me. Yes,
you have met here. Great.
Yes,
well, the small.
Yes,
always.
That's why I would like to speak with you in Polish. Yes, but this time in English. Well, you've mentioned something that I wanted to commend, that is exclusive holiday initiatives, you know, and in Poland, that is great, talking about Christmas and about Easter. And that, as for me, being an international student in Poland, I was in Wrocław, that was great. That was something that I felt that really I am the part of Polish culture now. And now I am being in Siberia, very, very far from, I don't know, everywhere. Yes, but teaching but I'm a teacher at school also, and teaching our small kids Polish language and culture. So that
wow,
I think it's great.
Really impressive.
Important. Also the role of alumni interaction. Yes, because they are the soft power, and I feel myself right now being Russian, but understanding Polish values and Polish culture. And I think it's great and important, and Poland does a great job at that. So yes, but my question is another another area. Yes, that's just the comments, general comments. So you were talking about your course in Lodz. And so, am I right that that is effective communication? Yes.
Yes.
But have you transformed into effective communication online? Maybe you would give us like few quick new cases that you transformed into online. How to communicate online effectively?
I haven't done the part of effective communicating online. There is the part when I talk about using emoticons to kind of, you know, claim more value from any conversation that you can have. But actually, I have to tell you that I was surprised to see that what my students cared about most was actually that I'm there with them, that I tell them stories sometimes, that I just that I'm asking how they are holding up. And I see that whenever we have this conversation at the beginning of each class, that they feel reassured, that they feel really comforted, and they are more eager to participate. They are more eager to get engaged. Of course, technology is giving us many opportunities. I'm using also breakout rooms with Zoom, which is a very basic thing, but it works perfectly. So what I actually do, I do the breakout rooms with them for individual exercises, and then I go and see them in those breakout rooms. So I'm trying to have this experience as close to what they know as possible. And of course, as many of you probably know, the quality of teaching these days is based on the actual goodwill on the part of the teacher and on the part of the students. If there is goodwill on both sides, then basically, like, we've got 60% of the problem out of the room, right? And you know, I think that nobody questions our capabilities as intellectual capabilities, our competences, but what can be questioned is how we behave as people, right, during this pandemic times. So I hope I answered this question. If we want to carry on this conversation after that, then maybe we can have an exchange. I haven't done, to my own surprise, I haven't done many different things that I'm doing offline. I haven't done that, but that's maybe because my classes were, especially this class, was always very relational. That relationship was like the key of, well, this is what my motto actually, that there is no learning without relationships. So you have to have a relationship with students, of course, healthy relationship and kind of with boundaries and everything, but you have to have it in order to achieve results. That would be my answer.
Thank you. I have a question about your personal experience in turning something inside yourself. When you deal with the students on Zoom, for example, you have to talk to these empty black screens, or in better cases, photos of people or their cats. Very often.
Yeah, the cat I had last time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what I found very difficult for myself, that I speak to this void, black void, and I do not get not even the energy from my class and from my students. I don't even get any reaction, and I cannot make them switch on their cameras. Sometimes they don't have them. So how do you deal with that inside yourself?
Well, I have to say that recently I've been quite successful in having them turn their cameras on. So again, I started by saying, I kind of devoted the first class that we had less to formalities, because, you know, they are in line with formalities, but more to how to make the whole situation more bearable for all of us. And I said, listen, I kind of appealed to their goodwill. I said, listen, I'm sitting here, and in order for me to perform better, in order to give you the better quality of teaching, I have to see at least some of you. So I understand that maybe not all of you can have their cameras on like all the time, but please, as much as you can, turn the cameras on. And I'm actually doing this every once in a while, like every 15 minutes, I can say, okay, can you turn your camera on and say hi and tell me that you are here, that you understand. Or I'm trying to get them as much as possible to answer questions, do small exercises, do stuff that kind of keeps them engaged, because normally, even in the offline world, it's really difficult to get students engaged these days, let alone the online environment. So I'm kind of, I guess that this is the the methods that I can't remember the name in English, but that you repeat the thing over and over and over again until everyone gets bored with it. So I say, turn on your cameras, please. I need to see you, right? I need to see that you're there. Of course, they tell me, okay, I have the very unstable connection, and this is where I understand, because it's not. But I don't resort to things, because this is what I heard other people do. I don't resort to things that if you don't have your camera on, then it means that you are absent. I heard that it's being done, that people are essentially forced, and I cannot force them, because I don't know about their situation. I don't know whether about their home, about, you know, their family situation. Maybe they don't want to get disclosed or anything, right? So that's I think that's the I kind of believe in these appeals.
You appeal and again, and they started listening to you, and they started.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if I don't turn the camera on, I just ask them to answer without the camera, so that I know that they are there and they are actually following.
We have a question on the chat. How were the entrance exams for foreign students held during the pandemic? In your opinion, will this type of examination be repeated in the future?
Okay, so I have to refer to the Polish system. So the entrance examinations are actually absent. So what the students do when they graduate from high school, they take their final exam that we call matura, right, at high school. So this is what they did. And when they enter, for example, bachelor's degree, they need to provide us with a transcript of records from their final examination, and of course the average from the entire kind of learning process. And if it goes to like the master's level, again, we have applications that are ranked according to specific criteria. So at the moment, we don't have the entrance exams as such, physical entrance exams. It's pretty much online. You can upload your everything. You can upload it online.
Thank you very much, Marta. We have 2 more minutes, please.
Wow.
We asked 2 questions. We asked those questions in I think in letters to our speakers, and we said that if we have time, we would ask them on air. How have you been feeling all this time? What have changed for you personally, psychologically, professionally?
Okay, very quickly. I have to say that I have very different experience with the first wave of pandemic, which I actually enjoyed, however strange it sounds, but I did enjoy that. Well, probably because of the weather, of the sun and everything. And I feel very different right now. Of course, I feel overwhelmed sometimes. And I feel sometimes that, you know, there is no ending to this whole situation. And well, if I'm ever going to go, you know, abroad for a conference or just for vacations, right? But what I observed, and I think that this is a part of our like academic understanding of things, that such events like this, or even online classes, which we all kind of, you know, worry about and complain about, these are the moments in which you get invigorated. Right? These are the moments that are able to wake you up and to put you up on your feet again, in spite of the many difficult emotions that are running through your head. Of course, those of us who live in families, who have young children, who do homeschooling or online schools, just like I do, I have 2 small kids and they are both on online schools. This is again another challenge, right? How to cope. But I think that, you know, this is something that we, just like you said, the stages of grief, right? We need to accept, right? And to see what best we can do out of the situation.
Well, we wish you the best in your professional activity. Thank you very much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to see your presentation, to hear your view on everything. It's very important for us now, really, when we think that maybe we will never go abroad again to any international conference. We will never see our international colleagues again face to face. It's important at least to know that there is something outside, that there is,
of course,
So I hope we will meet in a couple of years, in 2 years exactly, and we will discuss something like the brilliant present of the university after the pandemic of 2020, something like that.
Exactly. Let's hope for that. I'm hoping that maybe even earlier than 2 years will be possible. It will be possible for us to move around again. Thank you so much for having me